Hello and welcome to my first Tuesday of the month live stream. I am Diane Caplan and today I'm presenting a program about the moon. The program is called Full Worm Moon. And the reason it's called that is because it turns out that the full moon in March in indigenous American places, the indigenous American people, many of them refer to this full moon as the worm moon because as the trees start to thaw, a beetle, kind of a larva of a beetle that looks like a worm, emerges from the tree bark. And so the March moon is always called the full worm moon in indigenous people. I don't know if all of them, I don't want to categorize that. In some indigenous places, but in the United States, it is the worm moon. I'm going to play 4 pieces today that speak to some qualities about the moon. I'm going to start with a piece by the renowned American composer Philip Glass. He is known as one of the founders of the compositional style that became known as minimalism. He himself does not like that name. He prefers to be called a composer of music with repetitive structures. The piece I'm going to play is called Orbit. It was written in 2013, and admittedly, it doesn't say orbit of the moon, but we know that the moon is an orbiting body. And I think you will find in this music this sort of haunting, mysterious, beautiful longing that we have for the moon. And also the moon. The moon is a repetitive structure. It does the same thing month after month, year after year. We never get tired of that. So I think the idea of this continuous evolution of the music that you'll hear in this piece is very appropriately moon themed. This is Orbit by Philip Glass. that was Orbit by Philip Glass. I'm just going to check. Good. I always am checking my live stream after a couple bad sound experiences to make sure no one's saying your sound is bad. I did a lot of sound checks today. So that was Orbit by Philip Glass. The next piece is called Lunar Orbit. So now it really is about the moon. This is by the Australian composer Stuart Greenbaum. He is professor of composition at Melbourne Conservatory. He has a very large catalog of works. And his style is very, I would call it eclectic. A little jazzy, a little popsy, some minimalism as well. And I want to read you what he wrote about this piece. I spent some time contemplating the 1969 Apollo 11 mission that first landed human beings on the moon from two perspectives. Firstly, that of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, who, after landing successfully on the moon and having done the required field trip of collecting rocks, etc., were then required to sleep before taking off again. This they found impossible, achieving at best a fitful rest in the frigid lander vehicle. Aldrin famously described his impression of the moon as magnificent desolation. And secondly, the experience of Michael Collins, who remained aboard the command module Columbia in orbit of the moon while Armstrong and Aldrin were on the surface. He experienced unprecedented isolation, not being able to communicate with Earth or even his fellow astronauts while orbiting the so-called dark side of the moon. This solo cello work, cast in arch form, is a contemplation of all of that. So an arch form is one in which, if we think there's usually approximately 5 sections in an arch form, the first and the fifth are the same material, and you'll definitely hear the music from the beginning reappear in the ending section. And then halfway up the arch, the second section and the fourth section are the same kind of music. And you will notice as you hear the second section, it starts getting more and more maybe abstract, sort of kind of spookier sorts of sounds. And when we get into the middle section, that's the dark side of the moon. It gets very still, very desolate, and very evocative of sort of this icy, impossible to imagine place. So I hope you enjoy Lunar Orbit by Stuart Greenbaum. That was Lunar Orbit by Stuart Greenbaum. That made my heart race a little bit. One of the things about doing live streams that's more difficult than doing live concerts is when you do a live concert, generally you get up and bow, and that dissipates some of the energy that builds when you play something sort of exciting. And I find that the hardest thing about live streams is that the calming down if you play something exciting. Okay. This is by the composer Azquinezer, who is Spanish. This is called Tres Danzas a la Luna, 3 dances to the moon. Couldn't figure out the word for a sec. To the moon. And the 3 dances are Invocación, invocation, Sarabanda, which is a saraband, a slow, elegant dance, and Veima. You will notice throughout this piece many of the same sounds that we heard in the Greenbaum piece, the Lunar Orbit. For example, in this first movement, you'll hear a lot of harmonics, which are those high glistening notes, which I think are really, really appropriate for that evocative, otherworldly, literally, quality that we give to the moon. And in the last movement of this, the third dance, you will hear some amount of pizzicato, plucking, percussive technique that also is very much like the Lunar Orbit. So this is Tres Danzas a la Luna by Azquinezer.
That was Tres Danzas a la Luna by Azquinezer. And if you enjoyed that, I urge you to go find her website and listen to some of her other recordings because she's really wonderful. So the last piece on the program is next. This is a piece in 4 movements by the American composer Oliver Caplan. He lives in Massachusetts, writes a really wide variety of different kinds of music, and particularly likes to celebrate stories of social justice, conservation, and community in his works. And I think you'll really hear the community piece in this work, which is called Moon over Appalachia. This is a suite in 4 movements, each of which has a very evocative and interesting title. And it is based on folk music from the Appalachia region, Appalachian Mountains. And you'll hear, it's a very Americana sound, and I can't quite exactly describe what that means or why that is, but I think you will hear this very kind of old-timey country kind of sound. I believe you will hear that, particularly in the first movement. So the movements, I made a story to go along with the movements. I could have asked the composer what they meant, and I didn't. So because this piece is written fairly recently, it was written in 2011. And by the way, all the music on the program has been written since 2011. So it's all really new music. Okay, so the first movement, so in my story, it's about the moon, the full moon, in the warm time in Appalachia, and basically the whole town is going out to maybe a clearing in the woods where they're going to enjoy the light of the moon and have a party. So in the first movement is called Pumpernickel and Cheddar, which suggests sandwiches to me. So they're taking their potluck dinner into the woods, to this clearing in the woods where they're going to have their party. And you can hear a little bit of the jazz bass, kind of the band is getting set up and warmed up as well. The second movement is called Twinkle Toes and Rainbows. And I think here we really hear the kids playing. It's a really, really playful movement. The band is starting to play also, so lots of playing. The third
movement is called midnight. So by now, all the townspeople have been partying. They are having a really great time. They start dancing really a lot, this late in the night kind of midnight dance. It very much reminds me of a tarantella, which is a dance in the same meter, 6/8 meter, which whirls and whirls faster and faster as it goes. And then the last movement is called story time. So now everyone is exhausted. They're trudging home, or they are home, they're in bed. The kids are tucked in and they're read one last story before they go to bed with the light of the full moon still shining on them. You can have your own story if you wish, but that's mine. This is Moon over Appalachia by Oliver Caplan. And then we all go to sleep under the full moon, which you can do tonight. That was Moon over Appalachia by Oliver Caplan. I hope you enjoyed this program. Thank you so much, whether you watched this as it happened live or whether you're going to watch it, you'll be watching it later. This month and the next 3 months, I have sort of nature-based themes. Next month will be Earth, Music of the Earth, because Earth Day happens in April. In May, the first Tuesday of May, will be birds, Song of the Birds, and in June it will be all about trees. So just kind of this little nature pocket going on right here, but all was very interesting music for solo cello that you probably have not heard before. I'm going to just briefly glance at comments before I leave. So many friends, thank you so much, everybody. Well, wow, I will. As usual, I write afterwards. I write little notes to everybody who leaves a comment. So I will see you elsewhere on the internet. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to give you my little closing screen right now.